In at number 10, we have the Yeti. But what makes the Yeti such a fun creature to ride around on? And it really does come into terms with actually when you're using this creature, what you are doing is inherently fun, which is boss fights. And I have so many good Ark memories, especially when defeating the Overseer for the first time on the back of one of these creatures. And whenever I'm on the back of a Yeti, I am always having the best time. So I just associate these things with obviously just having great times in boss fights and having great experiences with friends and all of that. And just this creature is only really used again in boss fights for me. I don't really use it outside of that, just in the general world for attacking things and all of that. Although obviously I'm recording this B-roll, I wasn't using it in a boss fight, but that is a very rare occurrence for me. My Yeti usually stays cried and comes out just before the boss begins to obviously teleport it into the arena, and then it's all fun from there. Unless the boss goes really badly, but I haven't actually had any failed boss attempts when using the Yeti, and I have done a few where I've just gone with it for some reason without any like real preparation, and they haven't gone particularly well. But this creature is just an absolute legend when it comes to bosses, really. Now, the Rock Drake has to be fun. Like, when you think of this creature and you think of its main ability being gliding and the fact that it deals so much damage, this thing is just one of those creatures, you know, if it was in like a theme park, you would choose the Rock Drake ride. You wouldn't choose the T-Rex ride, although, you know, T-Rex has its place. The Rock Drake ride is going to seem a lot more appealing. That is somewhat of a tongue twister and a little bit hard to say. If you say that a couple of times really fast, you're not going to be saying Rock Drake ride anymore. Either way, in terms of obviously their gliding ability, it doesn't really work well on maps apart from Arboration. So on Crystal Isles here, I'm not having the best time considering that I am going really slowly, but you know, speed is always pretty much associated with fun. And Arboration, when you're absolutely hammering through the landscape with these things, you really can't be having a better time on that map with all of the land creatures, which are just so slow that you can't even be bothered to use them, although you did to get a Rock Drake in the first place. But once you have one of these things on Arboration, you really can't stop. Once you've got one of these things, you just travel everywhere with them. Like, you don't use any other creature, because this is the best creature on Arboration for travel, and it is, in my opinion, the most fun creature. Its tame method is a lengthy process, yes, but it is well worth it. And actually, if it goes right the first time, it can be a pretty enjoyable experience too. If it goes wrong, then it's absolute hell. And that kind of goes for a lot of things in Ark. If your first Shadowmane tame goes really well, then you've got yourself a really great creature. But its tame method is absolutely miserable, so I don't really go for those things. Now, the Thyla is just one of those creatures which has immense agility, which definitely does play a part into a fun creature, and pretty much all of the creatures on this list, apart from maybe the creature which is in at number 1, has absolutely insane agility. And it's just, you know, a fast creature which is capable of doing a lot of things, like the Thyla, which can climb trees and scale mountains and all of that with absolute ease, is going to be a really fun creature, especially when it's like the Thyla and it deals a hefty amount of damage on top of that too. And with the bleed ability as well, it's just, yeah, this creature is pretty much perfect in every single way imaginable. And there you can see that bleed ability in action on that raptor. It's been absolutely decimated. There is no raptor left to be seen. And although sadly in ASA the landscape is really not Thyla friendly, they still are capable of what they once were. Just, you know, you will need to take a couple of extra precautions and maybe you lower your expectations a bit, as you know, the landscape is quite buggy and its shape is, I don't really know what to think about its shape actually. There's just, I'm not really a fan of all of this terrain shaping, because it makes creatures like the Thyla sort of a pain to use in ASA, which I really don't want to say, because this is such a fun creature and great creature to ride around on that I don't really want to give it a bad rep. But I do think it is something which you should know about, because you'll probably encounter those issues if you're playing ASA on a Thyla. And you can see that bleed ability again on the Kentro, and this thing really does not stand a chance. And a Kentro is definitely a little bit more buff than a raptor, dealing a hefty amount of damage themselves. Although this one just didn't really want to attack. And sometimes when you inflict bleed ability onto creatures, they just don't really attack. And they are slowed as well. I think that is one of the abilities of the bleed ability. Either way, it's a great ability. The Thight is quick and fast and very nice to ride around on. And is definitely a creature which, especially on Old Ark, is going to give you a really good time, whereas on ASA, a little bit nerfed, I would say. Now, the Bloodstalker has to be fun. You are literally Spider-Man on this thing. This is the absolute king of the bog. Obviously, the bog spider is its sort of code name. Bloodstalker, obviously more official name. And the thing is, everything about this creature is inherently fun. The way it attacks is actually quite comedic, and to people who really, really hate spiders, that's going to be incredibly creepy to you. And also just this creature on the whole, actually, because it is a spider. But also, with its water travel being so great, the ocean has never seemed friendlier. Although the Gen 1 ocean is still something which you really don't want to mess with. But, you know, some of the other oceans, especially Crystal Isles, which I think the ocean on that map was never finished, yeah, you're going to have a good time under the sea with this thing. Obviously not immune to things like electric eels, but it is significantly faster than any of those in the water, so you're really not going to have troubles unless you're just sitting there like a duck and not doing anything. Obviously you can kind of tell why this creature would be fun by all this b-roll of me just zooming across the map with it as well. And to challenge yourself on Gen 1, there are race missions for this creature as well to add an element of competition, and if you have friends, you can race with them too, and you get hexagons as a reward. So, you know, it is definitely well worth it if you do have friends, of course. Otherwise, solo, it is still a really great bit of fun as well. And I have done the alpha one, although I don't think I'm in the spot to do it right now, as I haven't really used these things for a good year at least. I've kind of used them on and off for a year, but I used to use them just every day, all the time. Hop on Ark, get on the Bloodstalker. Now the Maywing sort of replaced it for me, but I will admit this is a much more fun creature to ride around on. Next up, we have the Shadowmane, and would it really be a fun Ark creatures list without this thing being here? Like, come on, it is the Shadowmane. This thing is immensely fun in all of its abilities, namely its mobility, again being an extremely mobile creature, which I think has to be warranted considering everything. Like, look at how high this thing can jump. It's absolutely insane, and you probably wouldn't expect it out of it, considering, you know, it's a kind of fish line. You'd expect it to be good in the water because of the fish part of it, but you wouldn't expect it to jump that high and over a huge distance as well. Obviously they do have that hydration buff and they're great swimmers. The kind of fishiness does make sense, and also they do eat fish for their tame method using fish traps. Not really going to get into the tame method as I absolutely loathe it, but there are loads of tutorials out there on how to do it, probably easier than I've done it. But yes, a very satisfying tame with a wealth of abilities and a great damage stat as well, which is always very nicely warranted when you have a creature which is so satisfying to use, obviously like this one. And in at number 5 is the Giga, and you know, why not Carchodontosaurus as well, but it's not on this list. The Giga is instead, mainly probably for nostalgia reasons for me, but just the process of taming a Giga and naming one tiny Tim is pretty much some of the biggest fun which I've ever had in the Ark game. Obviously it's still in the number 5 spot because, you know, there are definitely some creatures out there which I have had some greater fun on, although Tiny Tim is a joke to me which will never get old. If you get the reference, comment down the YouTuber that started that, or I really should say YouTubers, a bit of a collaboration there. And obviously with the Giga's immense damage as well, and practically really easy taming method, just being a very simple knockout one. Obviously a very highly resourceful knockout tame considering the amount of tranks you need to put in this thing, but still very easy and can be simply trapped. There are so many great designs out there for traps for Gigas. These things have been out for ages now, and yep, they just deal so much damage and they're just an absolute joy to use. And on Extinction, they're very practical for doing all kinds of Titan bosses along that map. Again, the Carchodontosaurus as well, with its taming method kind of downgrades it a little bit because it is a slightly annoying one, and although it does do more damage, it doesn't really have that nostalgia factor of being Tiny Tim. Now, the Desmodus is definitely one of the more recent creatures which has been added to Ark, but I have had a great amount of fun with this thing, especially with blood bag farming and getting even more Desmoduses and absolutely decimating any map in terms of covering it distance. Obviously, these things have the glide ability, and every single new creature which has the gliding ability just feels better than the last. You start with a Griffin and you level up to the Snow Owl, and you level up even more to the Desmodus. There may be some other creatures there which I've missed, but they're the kind of main three, and this is the smoothest glider of all in my opinion. And also they have Sanguine Elixir as well, which is an absolute cheat for tames. So if you're not one for waiting around for really long tames, get yourself a Desmodus, and then you can tame creatures literally I don't even know the percentage actually, but 30% of it will be done right there, 1 second click of a button. They can also go invisible at night as well, but considering the Wastelands biome doesn't have a night cycle, that didn't work, and for some reason the gliding animation glitched here, but you know, it is Ark after all, so you can't really say anything. In at number 3 is the Vonaur, and this creature is essentially just a living, moving turret, and what really could be more fun than this, apart from the creatures which are ahead of this creature in the list. But either way, essentially, yes, this is a living, moving turret, which is actually quite mobile. You may expect it to be a big hunking beast like the rock golem if you just heard, oh, living turret. But no, it is a small, agile creature which has a very, very simple knockout tame and an R variant on Gen 2, which you should definitely check out, as it's just an upgraded version of this, and if you have access to Gen 2, you really should whack one of those out. You'll be very, very surprised with all of it, and with that absolutely insanely low stamina drain, you can absolutely pelt turrets into these things. I don't know why absolutely is coming up in my sentences so much across all of the top 10s which I've been doing with this thing, but I guess I just have a huge passion for this creature, and I really love using it, especially considering I'm playing to extinction at the moment. But also, I did do a Vonaur taming guide back in the dark days of Ark, and that was with an Vonaur actually. Definitely you should check those things out if you have access to Gen 2, of course. But either way, the Vonaur still stands as a living, moving turret, which, you know, it just has to be fun. In at number 2 is the Mantis, and you know, this creature definitely does need to be put on this list for its insane wealth of abilities, and that obviously makes this a really fun creature to use, as you can absolutely slash through creatures with swords or pikes and farm loads and loads of metal with picks, loads of wood with hatchets, or, you know, loads of fiber with sickles. And especially with swords or pikes, you can smash through any kind of creature with absolute ease, including the Manticore, which is, if you didn't know, the boss on Scorched Earth, which is the map where these things originally spawned on. And also in terms of their taming method, although not the easiest, requiring Deathworm horns or Woolly Rhino horns, some bug repellent, and a ghillie suit for good measure, being a passive tame. Once tamed, you have yourself an absolute beast of a creature with a very cheap saddle, which is something definitely to be noted about this creature, and considering its insane agility and just, frankly, huge ability, which no other Ark creature has to this day, it really does stand as one of the most fun Ark creatures in the game. As what even is more fun than absolutely hacking and slashing every single creature which you can see, especially if you've got ascendant weapons on these things with a high level Mantis. You can have yourself some of the best time which you could possibly get out of Ark. Now, some people are going to hate me for this, but I have to put the Caro in for number 1, and this is probably mainly nostalgia driven, but the best fun that I've ever had in Ark has been on a Caro, or with a Caro in the presence of me, you know, just fighting for me, protecting for me, because, you know, for some of it didn't have a Caro saddle at that point. And calling one of these things Carney Dave, and also the big influence from Squid's Ark series back in the day, really gives this creature a big fun element for me. And still to this day, every time I hop on a Caro, I absolutely love these things in every way, and I can't really find anything bad to say about them, apart from when I did use one in ASA for this B-roll. I didn't remember its weight being quite that low, but it isn't too bad, and I did kind of go for a slightly lower level one, so, you know, you kind of get what you pay for there. But their stamina is really good, and their agility is really good, and their size is something which you can't really say about any other carnivore really. Yes, the Baryonyx is of similar size, that thing's actually slightly smaller, but you feel like you've got a little bit more power behind you with the Carno, although the Barry is a really great option as well. But with something like the Aloe, I just can't really get behind that creature, and I don't really know what it is, and especially with its size, if it was Carno sized, I might like it a little bit more, because I kind of feel a bit safer, a bit lower down to the ground. But you know, that's just me, and I don't really have any rationale behind that. I just, for some reason, can't get along with the Aloe. But also, like the Thyla, the Carno does have that bleed ability with its second headbutt attack. Its first attack doesn't have bleed, but its second does. So, you know, it is absolutely amazing. It does have that. It obviously originally didn't, but now it does. So, if you really have the chance, tame yourself a Carno. They pretty much spawn on every map. Really easy knockout tames, and you have yourself an absolute blast on these things. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all enjoyed this one, as I did hugely enjoy making it for you. And as always, comment down below what is the most fun Ark creature, and I will see you all later.